everybody, welcome back to another review on the Movies with Mike channel, or should I say, Movies with Jimmy. Oh, yeah, let's talk about the Bone Temple.
Lights, camera, action.
Hi, everybody, welcome back to another review. As I said in that little stupid cold open thing I did, today we're going to be talking about the next chapter in the 28 Years franchise, The Bone Temple. I'm wearing this. This is an old wig I had from a Halloween costume. So I was like, it's a little bit long and a little bit dark to be kind of the Jimmy hairstyle in it, but I thought, what the hell? I doubt I will wear this the whole time because this wig drives me nuts. But for the hell of it, I thought it'd be kind of just a fun thing to throw in here to see what happens. So, like I said, this was the next installment in the 28 Years franchise, and this was one that I was kind of looking forward to. But I was also really interested in, considering the fact that how the first one left off, and I was very curious to see how this next chapter was going to play out and what things they were going to bring into this. I just rewatched 28 Years Later last Sunday, and while my thoughts are pretty much still the same, it is interesting to see how much stuff can change when you have the next chapter of the franchise. So I think watching these back to back really helps out the first movie, because I'll be honest, I didn't realize how split and divided the first movie was until like later on it got in the year, and there was a lot of people that either really enjoyed that one or they were just very just disappointed on it. I found myself, like I said in my review that I did for it, I enjoyed it. There was some stuff I really liked about it, and I like this whole coming of age story that they did with that first one. And I like a lot of the things that they did in that first one. But I feel like in this second one, this Bone Temple, I think it almost takes a darker approach. So taking over the role of director in this movie is Nia DaCosta. She did Candyman, the requel of Candyman, if that's what you want to call it, or in the movie The Marvels, and I feel like she's got kind of a raw deal on some stuff or whatever. I know with The Marvels, it wasn't really her movie, how everything turned out. And with Candyman, while I really enjoyed that movie, I feel like more people kind of credit that to Jordan Peele more than actually her. But anyway, she's somebody I've always wanted to keep my eye out for, and I was actually really excited to see what she was going to do with this. I think her visual storytelling here really adds something to this. I know she said in an interview that she didn't really want to copy what Danny Boyle did, and I don't think she does that at all. I think she brings something to this movie that is in the same vein as how the others are shot, but while bringing her own style to it. And there's certain ways that certain things are shot that are very pleasing to the eye, especially with somehow like how time passes and you see the stuff in the sky with the Bone Temple kind of in the background and whatnot. It's just very appealing to look at. And it's really cool how she does this trick with the some of the infected, especially our main infected in this movie, Samson, which is what Ray Fiennes calls him. And they brought back some of that technique that was kind of in the original 28 Days Later, which was this when it has the perspective of them. For example, it has a very shaky, like erratic camera movement to where you feel like you're going just as nuts as the infected are. And it's a very cool way of making you really feel that, but just while putting you in the shoes of the infected. Like I said, especially Samson, it really adds that really cool element that they brought back, and really, like I said, just adds some kind of cool flavor to the movie. And while I think this movie is more of the darker tone, like I talked about in my intro, which I'll get into in a little bit, but I think there's also a lot of like humanity stuff in this movie, really kind of like almost a hopeful message. And without saying anything, I don't want to spoil anything about it, but there is a lot of stuff going on in this movie with Ray Fiennes and our character of the Alpha that plays a lot into that. It's almost kind of like the heart of the movie, which, in the first movie was it really about Spike and his mom. That was really almost the heart of the movie, where I feel like, in this movie, that is taken over by, like I said, Ray Fiennes and this Alpha infected, and what he's trying to do with that, and how he's just trying to bring some humanity back to, him, not really to him, but to this character, and maybe possibly try to figure out something to bring, to end this infection. And while on the other hand, you have Jack O'Connell and the Jimmies and all them, who is the opposite side of like that, which is this really just dark, twisted, almost cult like, these beings that are a part of here that is really, really doing these evil things to these people that are still alive and are still around, that are, just trying to live their own life and survive. And it almost has like these, near the beginning, for the first half of the movie, it almost has like these two different like type of themes going on. While it's almost like watching two different movies. It's so funny because you have the stuff with Ray Fiennes and the Alpha, and there's a lot of like funny stuff going on in that, and like some humor moments with that, and more of kind of a lighthearted stuff with that, while adding a little bit of tensions here and there because you never know how the infected is going to react, and they play that so well. But then meanwhile, on the other side, you have all this stuff going on with the Jimmies, and it's just this real dark, torturous, evil stuff. And so it's like it's two completely different tones, but I feel like they find a way to really balance that out really well, and I think they do a really good job with that. It's almost humorous to the point to where, like I said, you're looking at one half of it and you're like, oh, it's got this lighthearted humor to it, and then on this other side you're like, all this horrendous stuff is happening to people, and you're like, the tone is so like this. But like I said, I think they do such a great job of being able to really combine it together and pull it off in a certain way. I also feel like this is one of those movies to where the story builds the longer it goes on. So it's like each thing is building off of something, because at some point these two characters are going to eventually come together, and you're wondering how things are going to play out. And it's the same way of wondering how when Spike meets up with the Doctor again and how that's going to play out. And it does a really good job because you're always sitting there wondering what is going to get them connected to each other, and what kind of either chaos or thing that is going to bring to the table. And it does a really good job of, like I said, the story just keeps building off of each other. It's almost like an interesting way of putting it is almost like a powder keg, like something just keeps piling on and piling on to where you're expecting something like massive to like explode in the end. And in its own way, it does have that. Now, I want to talk about real fast, I want to talk about the acting, because I think Ray Fiennes is phenomenal. While you got a little bit of him in the first movie, this is essentially a movie that's co-led by him and Jack O'Connell. And while more of the first movie was kind of setting up his character, this one you really kind of dive a little bit more into him. And I really enjoy what they did with him. I think he's really good. And honestly, I could not see anybody else playing this part other than him. I think he's perfect for this part. And he has a scene near the end of the movie where, like I guess something's building to something, but he has a scene near the end of the movie that is really awesome. Like like has a great needle drop for music, and it's just really, really awesome the way that everything plays out, the effects of everything and everything around him, and the way he does like these certain. I'm trying to tiptoe around it, but the way he does certain things, and it's just really, really cool how it plays out. And I think Ray Fiennes did a phenomenal job, because it's almost like a part for me that I've never seen him play before. So I thought he did a really good job. Now, I want to talk about Jack O'Connell for a second, because I think he is absolutely phenomenal in this movie. He is so phenomenal. He chews every piece of scenery that he is in, and this guy is relentless. He is so just evil and just nasty and has no remorse for anybody that comes in his way. Like this guy has this god complex where, it's almost like I said, this whole thing with the Jimmies is almost like this cult type thing, and he's going to do what he believes in, and he is terrifying. Like he is just ruthless, and he's somebody that I would really be scared to come in contact with in this type of world, because he is just ruthless. There's not a single thing that I don't think he would do to somebody, and that's the scary part, is that it doesn't matter. You could be an innocent person, and he's going to do what he's going to do, and that is so terrifying. But he absolutely nails it in this movie. He is phenomenal. And while you don't like the character, you're not made to like this character at all. He's so infectious with this role that he's playing. You can't help but to want to watch more of him. and see what he's going to do and what he's going to say and all that stuff. And it's so well done. He is absolutely just phenomenal. Like, this dude, I've seen him in some other stuff. And of course, I saw him in Sinners last year, and he was fantastic in Sinners. But he really, really gets to chew the scenery and the stuff that he's doing in this movie. Like, bravo to him. This guy is incredible in this movie. There's also a great scene, without spoiling anything. There's a scene I feel kind of near the end of the movie where it's just Ray Fiennes and Jack O'Connell having this conversation. And while I was watching the movie, the conversation to me just felt so real, and it was almost this nice breather of a moment in this movie where, like, this world of chaos is going on, and especially everything that they've done so far leading up to this moment. That watching this scene between the two of them was just like a masterclass of actors just going, like, playing a perfect ping pong match back and forth off of each other. Watching them just have this conversation, and it felt so real. And you bought into everything. That's what I'm saying. There's never a part in this movie where anything takes you out of it to where you're like, oh, they're just acting. This movie just felt like it was taken out of a chunk in time, and you're seeing the footage from it. Like, it's just that well done between these characters and between the actors. I will be interested to see how people really feel about this one. How I feel like this one is kind of more on the slower side. It kind of takes stuff down a few notches from the first one, where the first one was kind of more of this, coming of age story with Spike and his dad teaching him about stuff, and then he goes on this journey with his mom. And while I feel like there was obviously the infected in that movie, I feel like this second movie does not ratchet up the tension as much as it did in the first movie. I know in that first movie, the first like 30-40 minutes when, they first go to the mainland is super, super intense and almost nail-biting. And you get a little bit of that, later on in the movie, not as much as you did in the first 30-40 minutes of that first movie. And while there is some tense sequences in this movie, I just feel like it never got to the same level of tension that it did in that first movie, especially, like I said, the first 30-40 minutes. But the little bit of tension you do get in here is really well done. And I think the story is fascinating enough to where it keeps you pulled in, it keeps you engaged, because you kind of forget about the infected here and there because it's so focused on these human characters that it almost kind of takes you out of that a little bit, which I think is a really cool, really cool thing to have. But this movie is mainly focused on the more of side of humanity and the more of what humanity can become in situations like this, and how, there's certain people in the world that could be like this. I think it's the same if you watch any TV show about zombies or infected or the end of the world. It's like they always say, the people that are left in the world, those are the ones that you really have to fear more than the unknown or more than the infected or the zombies or anything like that, because I feel like when something like this happens, you don't really know what other humans are capable of, and it really, really explores that in this movie, and it really goes certain places to where how far like these group of these Jimmies will actually go. And with that being said, there is a ton of just bloody violence in this movie. So, like, why? Yes, in the first one you had some gripping, bloody stuff of pretty gruesome stuff of the Alpha ripping heads and the spines out of bodies, and there's a little bit of that in here, but the stuff that the Jimmies do to certain characters in this movie is brutal. It's just absolutely ruthless, and like I said, it just makes you hate that character of Jack O'Connell even more. But at the same time, like I said, he's so infectious that you're like, I'm kind of glued to this guy. I think the interesting dynamic too is also the other Jimmies that are in this group. Like, while some they're just there, that they'll follow Jack O'Connell to the end of the earth. That's just how they are. And there's a little bit about them in this movie, but not a whole lot. But there is another character. She's a female that is kind of more of the standout of this group. That's kind of, you can kind of tell she thinks Jack O'Connell's kind of full of shit, and she really don't want to be in this group, but she's kind of like, well, I guess this is better than nothing, so I'll stick with these people and see what happens. And she's kind of the standout of this group, and she's kind of, is trying to help Spike out and trying to, protect him in her own way. And I think that leads to a really good dynamic of where we're going to go in the next movie. And I'm very curious how that's going to play out, and how that story with those characters and what happens with them, how all that is going to play out into the third and final movie. I also think this movie does a really great job of, like I said earlier in the review, of the stuff with Ray Fiennes and the Alpha infected. There's such great stuff going on in between there that as this movie goes, and especially even by the end of the movie, you start to really kind of develop this caring feeling towards this Alpha, infected, and you're like, wow, it's cool how they were able to incorporate all that, especially how this guy, I'm sure, but even based on the first one, all this horrific stuff that this guy has done. But it's like that's one of the themes that, like I said, they explore and all that, and they do such a good job. But yeah, like I said, you start to be like, wow, I actually kind of really care about what's going to happen with this, and I really hope all the stuff that Ray Fiennes is trying to figure out. You're like, I really hope this, for the sake of him, I hope this works, and for the sake of Ray Fiennes, I hope it's able to work in the way that they want it to, and it's going to go the way that they want it to. And I just as an audience member, I think it's this extra layer of stuff that it adds to the movie and just kind of gives it a different sense of flavor at the end of the day. And I really, that's something I really appreciated about this. And like I said earlier in this review, I think this is definitely more of a darker chapter than the first one, which is funny because this first movie, that first movie was really, dark and bleak and all that stuff. This one, the stuff that it explores, not only with the Jimmies and all the violence and the havoc that they're creating, I think the stuff that it also explores with the religion and the stuff back and forth with that about how these Jimmy characters are like, especially Jimmy himself is more of this Satanist character, and what he's like, the stuff that he does and the stuff that he believes in, and pretty much he worships Satan, and it's got this like dark theme of religion stuff throughout it, especially when he meets up with Ray Fiennes later on in the movie. And I think overall it just adds this really dark layer to this entire movie, which is a really cool thing because it's almost like I said, it takes you away from the infected for a movie. Like I said, there is still infected in this movie. They're just not the main focus. And with all that, with this new stuff being added in, I think it just adds an extra layer to something that gives it something different that, in these other movies, it's been about the infected and people surviving and stuff like that. I think with those themes added in and these new characters and these dynamics of these other characters, I think it just brings a new flavor to the franchise, which I thought was really cool. But it does make it a little bit more on the darker side. Now, the character of Spike in this movie as well, I feel like he's kind of more in the back seat. I think he has certain moments in this movie to where he is able to shine a little bit here and there, but he's definitely more of the, in the background than he was in the forefront, like in the first movie. And the little bit of him that we get, Alfie, I think his name's Alfie Williams, I think's his name. He still does a really, really great job at everything he's given, even to the point to where I'm glad that we're following this character because I want to see him grow even more. And like I said, I want to see where his character goes in the next movie as well. And the thing I like about this movie is that while he's tied in with these Jimmies, it's almost like he's having a crisis of faith in himself to where you can tell he really does not want to be here. He does not want to have anything to do with this. And, it's kind of funny because there's a particular scene where Jack O'Connell's character tells him to go do something. And while he's doing it, you can see like this pain and this like just struggle he's having within himself. And it made me think back to the first movie in that moment, which I thought was really cool, where I'm just like, man, you went through all this stuff with your dad and you did all this stuff with your mom, especially went through all this stuff with your mom. And I'm just like, don't do it. And you have that moment where you're like, please don't do this. Don't go down that road, because think about them. Think about the stuff that you went through previously. And you're like, you're pulling for him because you're like, man, this isn't you. I know this isn't you. I want to see the person that I know you are from the first movie, and I want to see you continue growing. So I thought that was a really neat little thing. I don't know if that's something that was intended to be put in there or that was something that made me feel, just me in particular, feel a certain way. But in that moment, I just thought about his parents from the first movie. And as an actor, he did a really great job of being able to kind of portray that and put it into words. And sometimes not even putting it into words, just the looks on his face to where he's enough to where he's like, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to do this. But you feel so bad for him because he's physically almost like trapped there because of this presence that is Jack O'Connell in this movie, because you're terrified for him as an audience member. And it's so great to watch. I think this movie has a great amount of needle drops throughout too with the music. I think there's just really good music all throughout this movie, especially coming from Ray Fiennes. That's where pretty much all of it comes from. And it's they use great music and they know where to put it in certain parts of the movie. And I think that especially like I said earlier in the review, the scene that is near the end of the movie that involves Ray Fiennes. There's a particular song that they choose, and I think it was just awesome how they incorporated all that stuff, especially because of the performance also that Ray Fiennes gives. And I know, like, a lot of people, the first movie ended on this note to where people were like, what the hell? Because it was, that's when the Jimmies were introduced, and it's almost like this completely different tone of the movie kicks in, and everyone's like, what the hell was that? Like, where the hell did this come from? Everyone, I've seen so many memes and so many things of people putting the Power Ranger theme song and stuff like that, and I just thought that's hysterical. But I think where that one ended on that, like, really tonal shift of a movie and was like, what the fuck? Sometimes when they do these part one movies or trilogy movies or whatever they're going to do, when they announce them, they're bad. Some of them are really bad to not tell a cohesive story and just end on a certain note where you're like, okay, but I would like to have been satisfied with the story that was told, just in case something happens and we don't get the next story in the franchise. This movie tells a satisfying story, but leaves you wanting more. And like I said, with the ending, like I said, with the first one, everyone left with this what the fuck type feeling and all that stuff. This one leaves you not only, like I said, with that satisfying story, but leaves you wanting more. But the way that it ends, it leaves you in a point to where you're like, oh, now I have to wait for the third chapter. This one actually excited me for the third chapter, where the first one I was kind of like, damn, I'm curious to where they're going to go in the next movie, especially with that completely tonal shift of an ending. This one leaves it in a way to where it's almost like a perfect cutoff. Like where they chose to end it, I literally went back and was like, ugh. I was like, damn, I need the third movie now. So overall, I really had a really good time with this movie. Like I said, I went into this movie and I did not really know what to expect. Based on like some of the stuff in the trailers, I was like, I really don't know where this movie's going to go. But I really enjoyed the story it told. Like I said, it might feel a little slower in some context to some people because there's not a lot of that real fast-paced, infected, stuff going on in here. But it tells a really great story. I think it's a really great middle chapter, and it is pretty fucking dark in certain places. And I found the story intriguing enough to where I kind of forgot about all that infected stuff, like I said in the review, and was really so focused on this movie and the story that I found it really rewarding in the end. And like I said, it left me wanting and cannot wait for the third movie. So if this was a movie you were kind of, on the fence on because you didn't feel a certain way about the first one, or you felt kind of about the first one, I would definitely recommend going to check this one out, because not only does it just immediately kind of start into the next movie or like the next chapter where the first one leaves off, but it almost adds to the story to where it makes watching the first one even more rewarding in the end. So this is one that I would definitely say go check out and watch. It's definitely worth your time. We're off to a great start so far in January. We've had 2 for 2. Last week we had Primate, which I really enjoyed, and this week we have 28 Years Later. So if we can keep this momentum up for the next couple months, I say we're probably in for a good year for horror. So I really hope that's the case for this year. And like I said, if you felt a certain way about the first movie, this one might change your mind about that one. And for me, I do believe I think that I like this one even better than that first chapter. And it's one of those ones where, like I said, at the end of it and how it ends, I really can't wait to watch them all back to back to back as one big cohesive movie to see how it plays out. So please, if you're a big fan of this franchise, I would recommend checking this one out and giving it a shot to see what you think about it. I'm very curious. If you have seen this movie already, please comment below and let me know what you thought about it. Let me know which one you liked more out of 28 Years Later or The Bone Temple. I'm very curious, and let me know why, because I'm curious to see why people... I mean, I know the first one was so divided. I'm curious to see what worked in one movie that didn't work in another movie, or like this movie, for example. So please comment below and let me know what your thoughts are on that. This is the review you're finding me on. Please come over to my channel. I have a ton of other reviews, including a backlog of reviews from 2025. I just started this channel in January of last year, so I've been doing it for almost a year now. Thank you to everybody that's came over and subscribed, commented, liked the videos, watched my content. I really appreciate you more than you know. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That way I can see all of you people in the next one. Thank you so much.